Sometimes life deals a bad hand. The fact is that in life, horrible things happen to us. Understandably, these horrible things can potentially overshadow the good. The key question then is not why this stuff happens, but how in the world do we manage ourselves when these things occur? Do we crumble? Do we become depressed or hopeless? Or do we rally? Perhaps the most important, how do we rally? These questions, of course, make us once again visit the concept of resilience. Because some of us seem relentlessly resilient. How do we understand this? Are we born resilient, or do we build our resilience as we might train for a marathon? Although we have some answers to these questions, the jury is still out. We've become naturally invested in understanding the phenomena of resilience. We know, in fact, that resilience is critical to the establishment of health. What's resilience? Resilience is best understood as an individual's ability to maintain personal and social stability despite adversity. So it's appropriate to have someone who embodies resilience every single day of their life. Today's guest is Katie Lasky. Her story, life events, and powerful, energetic presence transcends some of life's toughest situations. Do you need to be resilient to live an unconditional life? You be the judge. Welcome back to An Unconditional Life. Hello and good morning. Welcome to An Unconditional Life, a special edition for Independence Day. And my name is Joe Italic, and I'm so glad that you're here. I woke up knowing that I live in a free country, and I realized that there are some people in this country who don't feel free at all. And so I purposed that I would bring on someone who I loved, who I trusted, who I've learned from, who's been an amazing example of when the shackles of life take us and kind of constrain us. That when you make a choice and you really know who you are and you know the power of decision, that you absolutely can propel in your life. And that's who I brought for all of you today. So I want to introduce you to an amazing individual who I'll sit down for today's show and talk about this idea of freedom as well as resilience, because her life is a stunning example of being resilient amidst the things that life brings us without us even choosing, realizing, being victim to potentially. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Katie Lasky. Now, Katie exudes an energy that can leave you breathless. Oh my gosh, your heart beating and reconsidering your boundaries, your fears and capabilities. What she does is she harnesses the positive energies of the world and radiates them back to the people that she meets. Now, equally matched is the professional manner in which her expertise is shared, how it's demonstrated, and how she teaches. What's her mission? Her mission is to empower you to reclaim your life. And how do I know that? It's because she's reclaimed hers. Now, Katie's naturally wild nature becomes laser focused when supporting others through the process of healing, transformation, and resiliency. Now, Katie's mission is brought to life through her different roles as a transformational coach and speaker, facilitator, and performer. And what I know is that the most common feedback that Katie receives about her work is that she approaches every day with fierce love. And I learned that early on when I met her. And so she has earned the nickname Love Bomb. And I'm not going to waste any more time, but I want you all to meet Katie Lasky. Katie, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. So good to see you. And I'm so glad that you're here. And just, I've been waiting for this. I know we've talked a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I want to reserve you for a July 4th Independence Day show.
Yes.
You know, many times we have freedom and we don't really, but we act like we don't. We're not free, you know, and not just in this is the Independence Day for our country, but the idea of just personal freedom.
Right.
What's the idea of that? But, to kick things off, what I wanted to do, and I've asked every guest this, is, this show is called An Unconditional Life. And I want to explore that notion of living an unconditional life. So when you hear that term, tell me what comes up for you and what that means. What is an unconditional life for you?
So when you asked me to do it, and knowing that was the name of your show, I did sit and think about it a lot. And at first, my first instinct was like, oh, an unconditional life is kind of the life that's just like, what the, this is crazy, but to go into it deeper, go into it from a place where I definitely have had more healing and more understanding and more growth through all of it. What I think my experience and my definition of it would be is living a life where you surrender to your life's purpose over your own personal desires. So there's a life that I thought, or a life that I wanted, or things that I want, and I have to kind of take the hurdles and the redirections and the detours that I've been presented by life as an opportunity to see that I might have something greater to give, or something greater to learn, or I might be an example for the world, and I might not be here just for what I want to do, but I might be here for just this bigger purpose that I am slowly peeling the layers to get a greater understanding. So an unconditional life for me is just everything I want as a human, as the Katie, the human, is put to the side for a bigger purpose that I am going to just put my trust into.
Yeah. And so really it's aligning, right? It's an alignment.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing. At least that's what I'm interpreting.
Yes, totally alignment. And I am someone, if I'm not in alignment, I definitely, my body will get weird. I've gotten shingles before when I wasn't living in alignment and stuff. So my body actually physically responds when I'm out of alignment. It won't let me live any other way.
And that is just the beauty of this makeup that we have in our bodies. And of course, I've learned that from not being in alignment, in parts of my life. So we have a lot of kindred experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big reason why we connected as well. I've been privy to the insights to some of the things that you have endured in your life, and we're going to get to that. But today's about independence and freedom, right? And, we've heard the adage, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. What was the truth that set you free?
Oh, that's a good one. The truth that set me free was coming to terms with and realizing that it's not my job to protect everyone. It's not my job to keep people from pain or fear or anything from what I was going through. And I had to step back because I couldn't, not in a manipulative way, control people, but I wanted everyone to be okay. I loved so fiercely. And I took on everything that people were experiencing. And when I finally realized that life was going to happen and people were going to go on the journeys that they needed to, and I just needed to be me. And the other part was learning to be transparent, learning to be authentic. I had not shared what I was going through for so long, for fear that I would not get work, that I would get, lose different opportunities and stuff. And that did happen once I decided to share, but I definitely was never free until I knew that I could open my mouth and share my story.
Yeah. And many times we are kind of slaves to societal norms and expectations. Some of our groups that we're in, we have this fear of showing our full selves. We say we're free, but we're bound by others' opinions, of course, and expectations and all those types of things. And my experience of you has been just this permission, to just let be. And that was very refreshing to me. And that's why I think I was drawn to you so quickly and easily when you reached out to me, last year. And so, today's about resilience. And I honestly, it's like the more and more I know more of your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought my experiences were, they were equally so. It's not about comparison, but I really want people to understand this beauty of the resilience that you show up with every single day. And so, start to unfold the story that you kept for a while, and people had no idea what you were going through, and some of those things that, from, your health perspective and all the things that will come with that. So why don't you go ahead and start and share with everybody how your experiences has built you the way that you are today.
Okay. Well, so one key factor is I have a lot of energy, and I'm kind of like all over the place. And so I think people will misread. A lot of times people will misread high energy or like a willingness to be playful and goofy. And they'll either misread it, first of all, as childish or immature. But a lot of people read it as extreme confidence. And so that's a huge reason why I was able to hide so long. And I wasn't hiding on purpose.
Sure.
I had just taken on a role. So what started my stuff was I was like, it feels like someone's telling a story, something like it started back but I was a normal girl. I was just getting ready to become a teenager. I was healthy. I was playing field hockey and I was doing all this stuff. And I had like started to lose weight and was really tired all the time. It ended up being that I had probably like Epstein-Barr mono and stuff like that. I had tested for that stuff. But while I was in the hospital getting rehydrated and stuff like that, there's many different theories of what went on. My medical files went missing, so nothing can ever be shown as, like the exact answer. But I was given a medication that my body did not align with immediately. And I started getting violently ill after that point. So I was vomiting 30 times a day. I was just which they call CVS, cycle vomiting syndrome. And from that point on, my whole body changed. I couldn't eat without being in excruciating pain, screaming so loud that neighbors could hear down the street. I couldn't drink. I couldn't do anything. And then it was just a series of in and out of hospitals and in and out of stuff, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And of course, when you're just newly turning 13, a lot of the quick diagnosis would just be like, oh, well, she has an eating disorder. She makes herself throw up and stuff. And it came out of nowhere. Like that wasn't actually, I mean, I would play in my backyard and talk to invisible people and like sing on the swing and be this big star in my own show. So I wasn't in a place where I wasn't, I guess, like sexually mature. Like that wasn't stuff I was thinking about, was my body or, stuff like that. And so I got diagnosed with complete digestive tract paralysis. So from my esophagus all the way through down to the rectum, everything is paralyzed. So it stopped being able to, I don't have muscles, so I don't have anything that propulses stuff through, and I don't have the ability, it's all dead, so I don't have the ability to absorb. So like my esophagus has a disease where if it has liquid or food in it, it immediately thinks it's allergic to it. So it has an allergic, so it swells, and so then it closes up. And then if I'm eating or drinking something, then I would choke, and then it comes back out. And my stomach is completely paralyzed, so stuff will just sit there and rot, which then sends me into sepsis and different things like that. It also has flare-ups, so like my belly, could be the normal size belly, and then all of a sudden I'll grow 16 inches. And it's very painful. A lot of people explain gastroparesis as like having the worst food poisoning and the flu that you could ever have 24/7 every day of the year, and it never goes away. And it's actually a lot worse than that. You just learn, like you learn your new normal, becomes that. So when people ask that, like, where are you on a pain scale? And I was like, your pain scale?
Right. Yeah.
Or my pain scale. My small intestines doesn't really work, so it struggles to absorb. My colon, which I've had a bunch of them, parts of them all now removed, but my colon completely didn't do anything, and stuff would sit, and to the point where I lost my hair, my nails, everything. It was shutting down my body. And so that's gone and stuff like that. And then, the rectum at the end. So that stuff didn't work. And I think a major reason why, it was already hard enough to be sick, but part of, and what a lot of people don't know, is I got put into a child development unit when I had the sickness. And my mom and dad are amazing, and they would do anything for me. And no matter how much therapy or whatever they've tried, I know they carry this to this day. And it's been 29 years, 28 years that I've had this. But they suggested putting me in a child development unit, which ended up being a lockup unit where I was with kids who had eating disorders, tried to kill their parents, psychotic episodes. And I was just this sweet, I'm going to toot my own horn, just a sweet girl that was like playful and funny. And I was with people that I didn't understand. I had no idea what was going on. And I wasn't allowed to, they told my parents that it would be, like just a closer look and maybe it's this or that. And my parents had no idea. I mean, we had a healthy family. And back when I got sick also, you didn't question the medical world. You didn't, like now I'm like, be an advocate. But that wasn't as welcomed. I mean, it's not welcome now either, but that wasn't as commonplace as it is now. So I was in there till my parents could get me out. So they couldn't see me, and they said they would visit me every day and stuff because they told us that they could. Once I was in the child development unit, I was locked up. My parents couldn't get to me. I thought I became too much for them. I thought that they abandoned me, which is not anything my parents would ever have done. But, you're in there with these people and you're like, how am I? And I'm not judging the children that were in there. I know that they were on their own journeys and they had their own struggles, but it wasn't where I belonged. And to actually have a true physical diagnosis and stuff like that, when the medical world didn't know what to do, they kind of just put me there and tried to write it off as like, maybe it's mental stuff. And every time I cried, I got locked in a padded room. And I remember the doctor that was there said to me one day, when I cried, he said, your tears mean nothing to me. Every tear I see drop, you'll get another minute in the padded room. And it was just so hard. And I remember, and so part of the shift of what I took on was just that, like, obviously what I'm going through isn't okay to ever share because you're punished and I'm put away and locked away from my family. And maybe they left me. And, like I didn't know all this stuff that was going on. And that's what started my entire journey of, like as an Enneagram, I'm a 2. I'm a people pleaser by nature, just by like design. But it was just like, okay, when I think I was in for 2 weeks, it felt like 1,000 years. And my parents were on the outside and I didn't know, but they were fighting desperately to get me out. But they were like, you have to wait till the doctor discharges her, till he thinks she's healthy enough to get out. Mm-hmm. And so I was just, when I finally saw my parents, my parents were just as broken as I was because they were lied to for what I was going into. And from that point on, I think my character and who I was drastically changed, and in many ways in a totally beautiful way, but in a lot of ways in an incredibly broken, damaged way.
Yeah. So how do you process that? I mean, just for what you described so far, not only the physical pain, and you're a teenager, right? I mean,
right, 13.
And you're experiencing this and your friends and others are not.
Right.
And you have this authority figure as a doctor saying your tears mean nothing. You see your parents going through it. What's going through, what beliefs were you beginning to form just because of the circumstance about yourself?
Immediately, I knew that I was broken and that I was damaged and that I was a burden immediately. And it's funny because it brings me to tears every time I talk about it in a very healthy way, where before I would break down and, be like broken by it. Now it just hurts. It hurts to think of, I know so many 13-year-olds and I'm like, I can't imagine them carrying that weight. Mm-hmm. And it kills me inside. And it hurts that my parents have carried it for, decades now. But those 3 words, I think, broken, damaged, and a burden, have been things that I could identify with on levels that I never, ever would have imagined. I felt like that's how I was defined.
I mean, I think you shared that it was, you were 13 when it started, or?
I was 12 when I got sick, and then I turned 13 2 months later. And I think I was telling you, even when I was in when I was in the pediatric gastro unit, so not in the crazy place, a nurse came in. I had buzzed for something and she came in. I think my IV or something was getting out, right? And or maybe my tube feedings, I don't know, but something happened and she came in and she, totally unrelated to me, sighed. And she came in, she was doing whatever she needed to do, but she was touching me and doing what I asked for. And she just was like, and then she left. And from that point, so from what I went through in the child development unit, and then what I went through in that moment with this nurse who wasn't a bad person and probably didn't hate me, I just was like, oh my God, I inconvenienced her. And my mom and dad had to work for health insurance. So I was alone all day in the hospital. So I was in for a very long time, but waiting for, and I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't do anything like that because any motion made me so sick because I was vomiting so much that my whole body was thrown off. So I just sat for, and it was obviously before the internet and stuff like that. So I would just sit all day long and wait.
So, Katie, I'm going to back up just a minute here.
Yep.
Something that really, so you have the button, right, that calls for help.
Yes.
Right. And I think what you just said is that the nurse comes in, and then she lets out the, because and then that programs something in you.
Yeah.
What did it program?
It programmed in me to never bother people. That what I was going through was a hassle. And that if I just needed to stay quiet, and if I wanted people to be happy, and if I wanted to be the funny, happy girl I was, because those are the feelings I knew naturally to create, that I would have to never speak up, never use my voice, and never actually be truthful about what I was experiencing. So I had to always hide because obviously that was too much for her, and she's an adult, and I was raised to respect your elders and that they know best and to trust in them. And here I am hurt by so many of them,
And that is so important for those who are watching and listening. The words that we say, just how we treat others. I mean, I know it's like the 101, the way to be, the impact that it has on us. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm sure, it's crazy if I went back and we found that nurse. I can't imagine how much it would crush her to know that I then defined my worth in every area of life, in school, socially, with partners. The way I accepted myself to be treated by other people. If she knew it was from her side, I mean, that would probably destroy her. I can't imagine someone being okay with it. But it wasn't what she meant, and that's why it's so important to always. Part of the resiliency is always to show up and to let people know how you feel and to not wait for another minute to do it, because it's just like, okay, you don't know how someone's experiencing you, and it's not your job to, but what a beautiful gift for me to always tell you that I love you and to make sure that I'm clear and to become such a safe place for difficult conversation. So if someone does feel something about me, or I made you feel a certain way, or I did something and it upset you, I immediately want to address it and work through it, because I don't want anyone to ever carry the weight of something that I didn't realize I was doing to them.
Okay, so I wanted to address the illness. Yeah. So you couldn't eat.
Right.
Solid food, right?
Since 1992.
Since 1992, you have not eaten any solid food. Is that correct?
Almost. So for a long time, I was on tube feeding. So I had to learn, to put my own NG tube in, different stuff like that. And that went on a long time, 92 till 05. And in 05, I decided to abandon a lot of the medical world. I felt super hurt by it. I felt like I wasn't being heard, that it wasn't well received to walk away from them. And it caused a lot of problems with health insurance and stuff. I then became a juicer. So I found out about juicing, protein shakes and stuff like that. And I then did that from 05 till 2014. So all of my stuff was bone broth, fresh juicing and proteins. In 2014, I had another surgery that kind of, so I had my colon out, a part of my small intestines. My stomach was totally redesigned and a part of my esophagus. So my stomach was so big from swelling so much. So they redesigned it, but they put it in kind of like a kidney. So since 2014, I can dabble sometime in trying stuff and having different things. The problem is that I get usually violently ill from it. I don't go to, my elimination that I already struggle with, that I take medicine for, gets way worse. I can go into the ER. So there's a bunch of different problems by trying to eat something. But in 2014, because they redesigned it, so stuff wouldn't sit and just like rot in my stomach, and it actually might go through. I did have the ability to feel more human and to be more human,
right. Right. So since 1992, you said.
Yeah.
So you've not.
I haven't eaten for enjoyment with no pain or anything like that since 1992. Yeah.
Awesome. So no Big Macs.
No.
I mean, seriously. I'm not trying to make light of it. It's just I start to think about
humor is a huge part of my
yeah. I'm thinking, I ate pizza Whoa. I mean, I had a kidney transplant, so there's certain foods that are restricted.
Right.
And my daughter surprised me the other day. She brought home a sushi burrito. I was actually on your call, I
Right.
think. And I looked, I'm like, oh, it's raw salmon. I can't have raw fish, which I love sushi. So that's just a small little iota of a quote unquote like discomfort or
Right.
inconvenience to what you endure.
It is.
So I
It's
mean, the
very,
idea that you have the spirit that you have today
yeah.
is what intrigues me, right? And it is grounded in resiliency. How did you build that resilient like mindset, heart set, how you show up? I mean, when we first met, you didn't tell me about that story. I'm like, this girl's energy, I feel like I'm online. I was like, whoa. And then when I learned about the stuff you've gone through, I'm like, that's why I named this episode Resilient as Fuck. I mean, it's like, well, that would be Katie, you know. So how did you build it? Build it? How did you discover it? How did you know that resiliency was going to be your mainstay? You are grounded. It's not in it, but it is the way that you operate.
Right. Um, Definitely a journey, definitely not easy or simple. Is how I found it. I think I tried a couple different uh, paths to see if I could get away without having to do the work or get where I was going, and I couldn't. Um, so for me, part of what I needed to do was actually like I looked at it from a few different ways. I looked at it as the girl that was alone in the hospital, and could I help another girl that's alone in the hospital not have the self hate and the stuff that I carried for so long? So that was a huge motivator. I'm very motivated by doing and helping for other people. Um, for me, I felt so out of control. And the more that I looked at what I didn't have control of, like digestion, pain, elimination, basic things that we totally take for granted as humans, or
Yeah.
people who can do them take for granted. Um, I knew that I had to find a way that despite those things I couldn't do, what could I still do? Who could I be? And then that was what was really empowering. So even when I lived in the hospital, sometimes I would go see other rooms, or they want you to walk all the time so you don't get blood clots. And I'd be going, and there'd be other kids in the hospital, and I could maybe like color, and I'm not a good artist or anything, but like color or make a letter or send something. Hey, I saw you, or I saw on your whiteboard that you're going into surgery. Like, I'm thinking of you. And I started calling it um, Project Art for Smiles. And it was just like a different way to give back. And that made me feel good. And so it was small things that I was trying to do. Well, I'm in the hospital. I'm stuck here. I can't do anything, but I can go see the other pediatric kids, maybe read them a book. And those feelings of how good it felt to help someone else that also felt powerless, that also felt out of control, and to feel that. And so each time I did something that helped other people, I knew how good I felt, and I knew how healing it was. I didn't understand the impact. Like, I didn't realize how much it would project the rest of my life. And then the other half, so that was a really healthy venue of the resiliency. And then a definitely side that was more challenging and stuff for me was that because of what I went through, and because of realizing that I scared people didn't want to visit me in the hospital and stuff, because they're like, well, it's scary to see you so sick, and it's scary to see you so fragile, or it's scary to see so many tubes coming out of you. And so I knew at that point, okay, what do I have to do to be strong enough to be the person that everyone still loves, like they loved me before? And so this is where I think people get lost, is if they stay this side too much, is that I decided who I needed to be to make sure everyone else was okay, instead of who do I need to be in these moments to grow, to be grateful, to be resilient and stuff like that. And so there's a huge divide. And both ways I asked myself, who do I need to be? But one, I was trying to serve everyone else. And the other one, I was trying to be someone I'm proud of. And so I think it's the fine tuning over time. I knew that, like, I'll make people laugh. I'll always be funny. I won't tell people what I'm going through. I'll always tell them the answer they want to hear. And how odd that I then created an entire life as a performer and a comedic performer. Like, how
Yeah.
it's crazy that at a subconscious level I made that deal with myself that that's who
Mhm.
I would be.
Yeah.
And without even trying, I just fell into that. And then I mean, you know that I then had a lot of like tragedy and stuff happen that broke me. And then that's when it shifted to, who do I need to be? That just needs to be heard. Even if I'm standing alone, my stance is so strong now to claim my life back and to not have anything else taken away from me, whether I have a billion people standing behind me backing me or I stand alone. Who do I
Yes.
need to be in that truth?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you really made a decision to focus on what you do have
Yes.
versus what you don't have. Right.
Yes.
And I know there for many times, I mean, I think sometimes it's so natural based upon this world that we live in. We're always looking at like what I don't have.
Right. Or what everyone else has.
Right. And whatever everyone else has. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, I can relate pretty vividly because, through the abuse of my own body, I was violent with my body, of course, and it's through the emotional pain that I was suppressing my entire life. But I have severe neuropathy. And so there's different stages of it. But for a while there, I was in a walker and then a cane. And then when I had all the kidney issues, etc. I'll never forget the time. I live in Arizona now, and my family at that time, we took a trip to Sedona, and it's just so beautiful out there. We went to Oak Creek Canyon, and though it's a popular place, it was just something that I wanted to experience with my kids. And my ex-wife at that time, she loves Sedona. So we would go up, and it was the last day that I set foot in a creek or any type of hiking or anything. I couldn't get down, you know, the the rocks without. I felt so unstable. And then I thought, okay, this is just temporary. I can just, there was not necessarily any medication for it. I had to watch what I was eating and all that good stuff. And I would get some of the feeling back, etc. But then when I returned back to the Valley, in my corporate life, I was a district manager, and I would, be in the car all day visiting my locations and providing support and coaching. And I never forget, I was downtown Phoenix in this, in the tall, high rise, and coming home, I would go down a ramp to exit. I could not feel the pedal, and I was freaking out because there were people crossing the street. As I was going, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And I finally had an abrupt stop, and then I called my wife and I said, I can't feel the pedal, and she said, go slow, meet me at my parents' house, and that was the last time that I drove a car normally. And so my car now is equipped with the hand controls and what have you. And so I went through a pity party, just like most humans probably would. And I thought, I'm still given an opportunity to drive, right? And I'm still, and I started to get grateful for just the hand device. And who cares if people come in? I have a cool device that nobody else has. Yeah. And it does have, so I appreciate the mindset that you adopted and adapted, in it, because this isn't the only thing that you've endured.
Right.
And so I want you to share a little bit about some of the tragedies that you experienced alongside that, that you tell very openly, with your community and those that you support and those that love you, and have the bigger world once again see this picture of resilience and then how it really is a mainstay of health. So would you share?
Okay, sure. So along with my chronic illness, multiple times it's made me terminal. It's made me where they said I had, with my colon, I had a few weeks to live, different things like that. So a huge part of the illness and from a truly loving place from my father and stuff, also just their generation, I think, is more private than we are today. But he was just like, you can't share, you can't tell people what's going on. You'll lose jobs, you'll be a liability, and stuff like that. And every time he said that, though I know it's from the most beautiful place of wanting me to have everything that I wanted in my life and him wanting me to have no blockades to get there, I developed so much shame for who I was and what I was going through, and that it wasn't okay to be who I was, and it wasn't okay. Like people would say, oh, it's at least you don't have this, or at least you didn't lose your arm. Yeah, I mean, people just say random stuff to get out of that discomfort you're in. So I didn't think I had permission to feel anything else that I was going through. And what happened was my self-hate became so the heaviest weight that I could imagine. Like I can't even explain the level of hate that I had for myself in words. And no one believes it. It's funny because people, even when I was going to therapy, my therapist said, the girl before you and the person after you hate that you're here. Because they're like, what is that happy girl in the waiting room? Why is she even here? We could have an extra half an hour with you. And it's so funny. And she's like, I had to sit, to obviously for privacy laws and not share them. And she's like, I had to think in my head, she's probably one of the people who has the darkest self-worth that I've ever seen, or a lack of. And she's like, but the world doesn't see that. I'm such a bright light. And I am, my personality overrides everything, but not to be, and it was a disservice almost because people didn't ever stop and say, are you okay? Because I just kept getting up and kept going. And I think, so my self-hate led me down, making choices that were horrible, letting people treat me horribly. I was really badly abused in a relationship where I was lying and covering for him all the time. I thought abuse had to be just physical all the time or sexual. Those were the ones that seemed like they mattered. So I didn't realize how, even though sometimes it would, could get there, that the verbal and the emotional, I didn't realize that it counted. So I went through that and that super damaged me. But I was like, I just have to be grateful that someone will touch me. I have to be grateful that someone is willing to even put their time with me, because there's healthier girls out there and there's girls that aren't living a lie. And so when people would ask, the more and more you tell a lie, which was me just living, hiding. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't being truthful. The more my hate for myself grew, because then I hated who I was being. I hated that I wasn't being real. And I just had more and more shame. Like, I have to hide. This isn't okay. And people would, say like, oh, you're perfect, or you're this or that. And so I was so conflicted, because if I shared it, it was awful. But then if I didn't share it, I was just stuck in this place. And so I went for a long time, letting people mistreat me, letting men mistreat me, I didn't know that like sex and stuff actually was supposed to be enjoyable. I just felt like, oh my God, they're touching my body and they're willing to touch my body. And I put myself in horrifying situations just to be wanted or desired, because I felt like, well, I fooled them, I tricked them. They don't see what they see when they're with this. Went through hanging out in the wrong places with people just because I wanted attention, and not in the way that like a lot of 20 somethings want attention. I think sometimes that's from a place where they want and for validation also, but they actually like enjoy the process of what they're going through, where mine was tormenting myself. And I thought I deserved it. I thought that I needed to feel worse and to feel worse. And I ended up in those situations being around people that weren't into good things and getting into having a really bad sexual assault. And then feeling like when I disclosed to one person and they were like, well, why were you around those parts? Or what, immediately it was put back on me. So all this stuff just kept weighing on me. So I had the illness, I had this stuff, I couldn't eat. And I'm sure like in America, you have a birthday party, you eat, you want to go on a date, you go out to eat, you are sad, you eat, you're having 4th of July, you barbecue. Like, so to not be able to eat was also like, people would think, oh, you're so strong, or like, this is so cool. And then I ended up having like people now, what's called ghosting, like just leave, because they're like, well, I just felt bad and I didn't know how to not invite you to a barbecue. And I was like, well, I can go to the barbecue. Like, right. You don't have to eat to get in. Like, yeah. But people started seeing like what I couldn't do as a limit versus just like, I can decide if I'm comfortable going to the party. Some stuff is really hard to sit and just like watch people eat. And you're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like Thanksgiving was super shitty.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But so while this was happening, I ended up meeting this guy and falling madly in love with him. And he was incredible. And I had a really tortured time through all the years with him, because I felt like I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve him. So I would still be just doing stupid stuff and, like having people try to fill that void or show me that I was worthy. Well, this one person that loved me unconditionally was there for me. And then that led to one of the traumas. And that's kind of like what broke me, was that he he was always together. He had all his stuff together. His life was he was someone I saw as perfect. And it's because I'm so ADHD and he was so the opposite of that, that I saw that as something to strive for. But there was one night that I heard him crying, and I went into the basement, and he was, hitting a punching bag and stuff. And I'd never seen him cry or anything. And I asked him what was wrong. And he said, like, I just can't fix you. He was super smart, like genius smart. And he said, I can figure out anything. I can do anything. I can solve any issue anywhere. And he said, and I can't make you better. And I tried to tell him that, like, the specialists can't make me better. The doctors can't make me better. And I think what was so important for people to know is that we were also focused on the symptoms and also focused on the limits, that we weren't focused on what was happening inside me. So, like, if we actually knew that it wasn't like people who pray, trying to pray for me to be able to eat again and stuff like that, none of that really matters. It mattered that what I was going through was the hate that I was carrying. That was actually the worstness I was going through. And so we had that conversation. And then the next day, I saw a sign randomly that was like, if you love something, you set it free. And I was like, oh, this is what I have to do. And I remember having the conversation where I was just like, I want you to be with a healthy girl. I want you to be with someone who's, strong and has hair and isn't gross. And I mean, I'm not saying that I was those things, but this is definitely what I said to him. And he just said, I don't know what you're talking about. You're beautiful. And everything that I needed to hear, but I wasn't willing to receive.
Yeah.
And then we just stayed staring at each other, and I left. And hours later that night, he ended up killing himself. And which is another perfect example of how we never know what someone's going through, right? Like, Rick was perfect. And he had everything. He literally had everything together. He had just, the kitchen was being remodeled. He died a Sunday into a Monday, and the kitchen was being remodeled his way. He was having his barn built for his car, his truck, and his motorcycle that Friday. Like, he wasn't, the things that sometimes happen with suicides where it's like they plan it out and they're getting rid of things. And it wasn't any of that stuff. And when that happened, I broke in a way that I've never broke before. I was at the cemetery, and I was just clawing in New England, so the ground's frozen in the winter. He died December 1st. And but I remember going there, and just my friend drove me, and that poor girl, I can't imagine having been her in the situation. But she drove me, and I got out, and I just ran, kind of like a crazy person, and just started clawing into the ground really hard. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going to make this right. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get him out and put me in, and everything will be better. Like, then his family will be okay. And I'll just correct this. And I remember thinking that, like, still at that point, and I was 29 at that point, still thinking that there was something wrong with making a mistake. Like, a mistake was so, and I'm not a perfectionist, but I didn't want to upset people. So I guess where a perfectionist would lie more from, like, that controlled mindset of needing to be perfect just for themselves. I just wanted everyone to be okay. So mine was so heart driven versus, like, the perfectionist in their brain. And I just remember thinking, and then luckily months later, a therapist finally had an opening, and she was the first conversation we had. She said, are you open to the fact that the mind, body, and soul are connected? And I was like, yes. I didn't want to go to therapy, so I didn't want to agree with her at first. And she said, and are you committed to working out 4 days a week? And I was like, why? That makes no sense. And she was like, if you're not moving your body, you're never going to get the healing, because the body isn't going to be what you're talking about. The healing isn't in what we're talking about. She said, that's you clearing beliefs, but what has to heal within you is within your body. And so I thought she was crazy and kooky. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. And she is the one who helped me uncover all the patterns I had. The fact that I had lived a life constantly trying to make people smile and laugh and be okay. And when Rick died and when he got hurt, in my perfect, like, layout of, like, okay, Joe's going to be happy all the time, and mom and dad are going to be proud of me all the time, and none of these people are going to know I'm sick, and no one's going to know that I just had my colon out. And I was touring for a few years, performing the country, and I got dropped the minute I shared with them I need to have my colon out. But it's during the off season of the tour. I got told I couldn't come back. I was a medical liability. So I lost my career. The illness I just felt like, oh, here's another thing it's taking from me. It's taking away ever having an enjoyable relationship or sexual experience. It took my career. It took my lover. It took everything. And I had a choice in that moment where and I know in the perfect story, it would be us doing it for us that gets us out of our own hell. But in my story, it was wanting Rick's legacy to live on. And I knew that I had to be a better person and live a better story and start a new chapter to make sure that he was always honored for what he went through. And in a weird way, I was like, he's not what happened to him. That was a 1-second decision in a life of 31 years. He had a life full of so many smiles and laughter and adventures and challenges and journeys. And he did something that took 1 second to do. He shot himself. So it took 1 second to do, and he's not that 1 second. And then Leonie, my therapist, had said back to me, so why do you define yourself on something that happened for 1 second you got diagnosed? And that's just 1 second. And why have you defined your entire worth off of that 1 second when you won't let anyone have that thought about Rick?
Ooh.
And it was like, ooh, damn. And
Wow.
so when that happened, I knew, okay, I have a greater purpose. I have a bigger thing to deal with. And I remember getting clear, like, what does it mean to be resilient? Like I had to dig really deep on acceptance of getting sick, of a medical professional and an adult at the time making a mistake and not taking responsibility or accountability. I dug really deep about finding purpose and what does purpose look like through all of this. I had to have trust in the journey. So that I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I think everything happened, period. And then I think, and do I want to be empowered and choose to give a purpose and find a purpose in this? Or do I choose to let it destroy me?
I love that.
Yeah. So
okay. Yeah,
yep.
I don't mean to interrupt, but that is just like huge right there, right? So I don't know if y'all heard that, but it was like, we hear the adage, everything happens for a reason. And I think many people, default to
so
that.
dismissive to me.
Yeah, and then, but you said things just happen.
Right.
And then we get to attach or define the meaning of it.
Yes.
Right. And what your therapist had asked you in terms of, so you're going to define yourself around one moment in time, when that's just like huge, right?
Yeah.
What a way to shift. What a way to really like pull back, all of the circumstance, right? So it does, when I started doing personal growth work, we hear the adage that, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Right. Yeah. It's like,
tell me another one.
Pretty, right? Sounds really, really good. But then, as you have just articulated, it's like, I can see that. I can see how things.
And it's so empowering to do it that way, which I feel like when you live a life where you have no power and control over stuff, what an incredible gift to give yourself.
Right.
To find that where then you are the hero in that, in that part of the story.
Yeah, so Katie, hold on a second. I want to bring up, there's a few folks who have said something here. Noreen said, speaking your truth in your beautiful, vulnerable way. Happy joy.
Thank you, Noreen.
Yeah. Gwen said, powerful childhood program. That's a perfect example of how easily our programs get installed and control us for a lifetime. However, I believe that our greatest gifts are on the other side of our greatest wounds.
Absolutely, Glenn.
Yeah. So, and then Taz, the energy of your beliefs matters the most.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. That's very, very powerful. So, just wanted to give you some feedback from those who are.
Thank you.
A few examples of watching. So oh my gosh, I'm looking at time. I'm like, yikes.
I know.
All right. So for those who are listening, to get more of Katie, you can follow her on Instagram at Katie Lovebomb. On Facebook, it's her name, Katie Lasky. Her website, which is going through somewhat of a transformation, but is still available to find out more about her, is katielasky.com. Really quickly, while we have a few minutes here, I was just so lost and entrenched in your beautiful story. And there's others. Oh my gosh, that's just really the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Iceberg of some of the things that you have endured. But you're the last person who I know who comes from that victim mentality. It's a beautiful story, right? So how is that transcended to the work that you do? So take a few minutes to say, this is how I help people.
When I went through all of that, I decided when I felt like, so I lost work, I lost my career, I lost all this stuff. And I had a really mourning time for all that. And then I decided, what do I love about performing that I can create differently? How can I make it look differently? And it was sharing a story and an emotional journey, which I live. And so I don't have to memorize a script now and be a character on stage. I can just share my own things. So I do transformational work. I ended up studying and diving really deep into coaching and got a bunch of different certifications. I do EFT and breath work, and ended up getting my master prac for mindfulness and Reiki. So I have all different kind of healing modalities, but transformational coaching and transformational speaking to me is huge. I run a program called Revolutionary Resiliency. So it's teaching you the muscles. So it's 10 different muscles, a 10-week thing where each week we focus on something different. And then there's different exercises and stuff to get there to really like go to those places, really developing into curiosity. And if we come to our trauma and our tragedy with curiosity, how different it is than when we come with heartache. And it's not ignoring what we're going through. So what I love is that there's so many people out there that do coaching and do that kind of stuff. And they are in the mindset of those beliefs, like, yeah, but how is this happening for you? And I think it bypasses the experience. And I am a huge advocate for not emotionally bypassing or spiritually bypassing or anything. I say, like, let's go and let's invite all those feelings out to tea. Let's sit down with them. Let's talk to them. And let's just make sure we don't move in. Like, I'm not going to move in depression and blame and guilt and shame. And I'm not going to have us like live in an apartment together. But how can I see these feelings for what they're here to teach me? And so I guide people in such a like loving, tender way where all of that is okay to feel. I was so numb for so long because I wasn't allowed to say how I was feeling, that the beauty and the gift of the breakdown when he died was, oh my God, this is what it feels like to feel. I haven't been honest with my feelings for 15 years. And what a gift it is to be on the floor crying, screaming for someone to come back to life because I was feeling again. My body was feeling. And so, in Rick's passing and his suicide, though devastating, and I wish he was here on earth, he gave me the greatest gift that I could ever be given because he gave me a second chance to come back and to know that my story was that of which is to prompt change. I have I've gone through infertility and I have 6 angel babies and I haven't been able to be a mom earthside. And I created a program there called Broken Hearts Still Beat. And so it's for people who have gone through trauma, loss, and heartache. And how do you use what you're going through and not have to be from a place that's perfect? Like, I'm not the mom of 3 kids that went through infertility or that has a kid. I don't have that happy ending, but who I choose to be despite any ending. I'm not looking for an ending. I'm looking to be someone I'm proud of on the journey.
Ooh,
and I think that is, that's who I jive with. And that's who I call in
right.
for, clients or gigs. Cause it's not about getting sick and then getting well. It's about
right.
who you're going to be no matter what happens. When you release your need, your attachment to any end outcome, who are you in that moment?
Who are you in this moment? Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. You said that he was one of the greatest gifts, to you. And I would say that today you've been a greatest gift to us, being a true, authentic, whole self, right? Giving us a glimpse into what freedom is, even in the midst where it appears based upon physical evidence that you can't be, but you just demonstrated that you can be, right? So you guys check out Katie. If anything, get on her Instagram. So because I look at it every day, it's like one of the first like circles at the very top. I'm like, I'll be either amused, I'm going to learn something, or I'm going to go, whoa. I mean, so without being purpose to teach and to impart, you do just in your beingness. So thank you for your presence and for being here with us today. For those of you who joined, thank you again for joining us on An Unconditional Life. Follow the community as it's growing on Facebook at An Unconditional Life and also on Facebook as well. So thank you once again. Have a beautiful Independence Day. Thank you for joining. There you go, Katie. Giving us, there you go. I love it. All right. Bye, y'all. Take care.
Bye.